Okay, the title of this lesson for your notes is it's section 1.8, and we'll call this the Introduction to Variables, Algebraic Expressions and Equations. Probably the biggest focus will be on algebraic expressions, but we do touch on equations. So an algebraic expression is a combination of operations on letters, which we call variables, and numbers, and that is known as an algebraic expression. Here are three examples: 5 plus x, you have the variable x, you have a number 5, and you have the operation addition. You have 6 times y here. That's, both of these are very simple algebraic expressions. A little more involved would be if I have 3 times y minus 4 plus x. Remember, 4 times x means, 4x means 4 times x, xy means x times y. You could certainly have parentheses and other symbols of inclusion, and you could also have exponents in algebraic expressions. We'll see that many times. So one big task we learn to do with algebraic expressions is we learn to do what's called evaluate the expression. That means we're going to be given values for the variables for the expressions, and then we want to use order of operations to find the value of them, and that's known as evaluate. So here's our first example right up here. We have evaluate the expression 25 minus z cubed plus x when z equals 2 and x equals 1. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take for the z, we're going to put a 2 in there. And so that'll now be 2 cubed, and plus x is equal to 1. So we put the 1 in for the x. And now we just treat this like an order of operations problem. And this one we're going to need to do the exponents first. So that's going to be 25 minus 8 plus 1. We'll use our left to right rule for addition and subtraction. Do the subtraction first here. So that's going to be 17 plus 1. So 4z equals 2 and x equals 1, this expression, the expression above, equals 18. So let's move up, take a look at this other one. So a little more complicated this time. I have the expression x squared y, that means x squared times y over or divided by the quantity z minus 1. So in this one, x equals 2, y equals 5, and z equals 3. So I get 2 squared, plugging in the 2 for the x, and the y is equal to 5 this time, so I can say times 5, and all of that is over to 3 minus 1. So I'll follow order of operations and do the exponent first here, so that's 4 times 5, and then I'll go ahead and do the 3 minus 1 is 2. And so that's 20 over 2, or 10 is my final answer there. My final value for this expression when x equals 2, y equals 5, and z equals 3. So this next task is not nearly as difficult, but it is an important one, so we do want to give it justice. It's turning words into algebraic expressions. It's important you know words like product and sum and difference and all those, but so this will help us as we use equations to solve word problems later, this kind of skill. So we want to take this first example, we say the product of 5 and a number. So so the easiest way to write that, I usually use n for a number, but you could certainly use an x or any other letter for that matter. So I'm just going to write that as 5n, and that means 5, that's the product of 5 and a number that we don't know the value of. So the next one is twice a number, so that means 2 times a number. So I would just say 2n on that. A number decreased by 3. All right, so and the way to know how to do these, if that's confusing for you, if I said 10 decreased by 3, you would say 10 minus 3, but we don't know the number's values, so we're going to just say n minus 3. A number increased by 2, increase is going to mean add, so that one's going to be n plus 2. 4 times a number, That should be pretty obvious. That's just for n. On the next slide, if I say the sum of a number and 7, so sum means addition, so n plus 7. And this next one is 3 times the sum of a number and 7. So first one we're going to need to insert some parentheses. So if I'm going to make sure that I sum the number and 7, I've got to have parentheses around them, because otherwise I wouldn't be summing the n and 7. For example, if I had 3n plus 7, that would be 3 times a number plus 7, or the sum of 3 times a number and 7. So that's different from what it says in the phrase. The quotient of 5 in a number, so when you have that occur, make sure you put the number that comes first in the numerator. So that would be 5 over n. If it was n divided by 5, or we could write 5 divided by n. So if it was the other way around, it would say the quotient of a number and 5. But since the 5 comes first, that goes in the numerator. All right, so equations, so we've been dealing with expressions so far. Equations naturally have an equal sign. So 5 plus 2 equals 7 is a very simple equation. Equation is in the form of an expression equals an expression. You have this numerical expression equals 7. I guess we could consider 7 to be an expression. So this is the equal sign. It's the left side equals the right side. One of the things we consider with equations that have a variable in them, so when an equation contains a variable, we need to decide on the values for the variable that make an equation a true statement. And that's called solving an equation for the variable. So the solution of an equation is the value for the variable that makes an equation a true statement. So here's an example. So if I have the equation 2y plus 1 equals 3, the question here is determine whether 2 is, or the task is determine whether 2 is a solution of the equation. Well, we know 2 is a solution of the equation is if we plug it into for the variable y, and it makes a true statement. You'll see here, when I plug 2 in, I follow order of operations on this side, and I get 4 plus 1 equals 5. 5 does not equal 3. Therefore, 2 is not a solution of the equation. Now, if you may have already realized that the solution to this equation is actually y equals 1. Y is what would be the true solution, because when I plug 1 in for y up here, 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So y equals 1 is actually the solution. So when you get problems like this, you're just assessing, you're going to say true or false based on plugging in and see if both sides end up equaling each other. And that is the end of the lesson.